Chapter 4, City Kid. Natalie's mom was nervous when her 12-year-old daughter had to get around New York City on her own. So she was nervous almost every afternoon. She didn't like it, but she didn't have any choice. Every weekday morning, she put Natalie into a taxi at the bus station. The cab drove straight uptown to the Deary School at a time of day when most of the traffic was going the opposite direction. Even so, that ride still cost about $9, but an afternoon cab ride to her office building near Rockefeller Center took much longer, and the fare was almost twice as much. Hannah Nelson just couldn't afford to pay that much for transportation every single school day. She worried, but she knew Natalie was a good city kid, always has been. Back when Natalie was only 3 and they still lived in Manhattan, her dad had taught her to look for a police officer if she ever got lost. If she couldn't see a police officer, Natalie learned she should talk only to a lady with children, because a mother or a nanny would always help a lost child. She also learned how to dial collect from a payphone and how to use 911. Her dad had taught her well. Natalie knew she had to be careful in the city, but she also knew that she didn't have to walk around feeling afraid all the time. She felt fine about her daily trip to her mom's office. She was tall for a girl of 12 and looked as if she might be 14 or 15. She had plenty of street smarts, but she also was well equipped. Natalie had a whistle on a lanyard around her neck and $20 bill under the liner in her left shoe. Hannah Nelson also made her daughter carry an emergency cell phone. Natalie could push one button that sent a message to the police, to her mom at the office, and to her Uncle Fred. Fred Nelson was her dad's younger brother, and he'd made a point of spending time with Natalie ever since the accident. He lived a few blocks from the Deary School, and his office was on Madison Avenue. If there was ever a problem, Natalie would have plenty of help. Still, at least once a week, her mom would remind Natalie of the basic rules. If a person begins bothering you, yell and start running. Never get into a car or a van, and if someone asks you to come closer, run the other way. Always stay on the main streets where there are plenty of people. If someone ever grabs hold of you, bite, scratch, kick, scream, do whatever it takes to get away, and then run. Keep calling for help and hit 911 on the cell phone. Don't get into an empty bus or an overcrowded one. Sit or stand at the front near the driver. Never go into a strange building. Like most city kids, Natalie had developed a kind of radar, scanning the sidewalk ahead of her. If she saw a person who looked shady or someone asking for money or acting pushy or weird, she'd find a way to avoid a face-to-face meeting. If she had to, she would always cross the street, but usually it was just a matter of watching for the right moment to pass by. At age 12, and after years of walking in New York, avoiding trouble had become almost automatic for Natalie. Still, it's impossible to plan for everything. There was the time a woman on the bus started yelling at Natalie's backpack like it was a dog that was trying to bite her. Natalie was scared, but she stayed calm. When the driver shouted, "Hey lady, shut up or get off," the lady got off and started screaming at a trash can on the corner. And then there was the time Natalie thought the tall boy wearing sunglasses was following her. He walked behind her all the way from 79th Street to the bus stop at 72nd Street and Broadway. When he took the same bus she did, Natalie got really scared. She thought he was looking at her from behind his dark glasses. Just when she was about to ask the bus driver for help, the boy stood up and got off at the next stop, and Natalie saw him walk into a big bookstore on 57th Street. False alarm. Today's trip was uneventful, and when Natalie got to the lobby of her mom's building, she signed in at the desk, got in the elevator, and pushed the button for the 14th floor. The elevator hummed up to the 3rd floor, and 3 more people got on. They pushed the button for floors 5, 7, and 8. People got on and off the elevator at almost every floor, and soon Natalie was squeezed against the back wall. The first time she'd come to visit her mom at work was about 4 years earlier. Back then, Natalie was sure that making children's books had to be the most exciting job in the whole world. Natalie had expected to see mountains of books in huge, noisy workshop. Some people would be painting book covers, others would be printing and folding the pages, and over in the corners someone would be gluing everything together. What she actually saw on the first visit was a large, quiet room filled with a maze of little offices. Here and there, small groups talking quietly at large tables, and everywhere people sat at computer screens tapping away. True, there were plenty of books around, stacks and boxes and bookcases of them, but they were all finished. Natalie was disappointed. A publishing company was a pretty boring place. The elevator door opened on the 14th, and Natalie stepped out into the thick green carpet of the reception area. The receptionist was talking into his headset, but he gave her a smile and a wave and then pushed the security button. The door to the right began to buzz. Natalie pushed it open and walked into the editorial department of Shipley Junior Books. The sign beside the opening of her mom's small windowless office said Hannah Nelson, editor. The room had a door and a ceiling, but in all other respects it was a basic cubicle. The office contained a desktop that made a U, and bookcases lined the walls. Every inch of space was loaded with piles of paper and books. There was a computer, 2 small filing cabinets, 1 swivel chair, a plastic trash bag, and 1 straight-back chair just inside the doorway. All the furniture was gray and green. Balanced about above the computer screen was a single photograph in a clear plastic holder. Dad and Mom and Natalie in a sailboat. Every time she came to the office, that picture was the first thing Natalie saw. All 3 of them looked like they were having a good time, but Natalie couldn't remember being there. She always wished she could. Hi, Mom. Hannah Nelson spun around in her chair and pulled Natalie into a hug. She held both of her daughter's hands a moment and then reached up to push a wisp of brown, blonde hair out of Natalie's eyes. Have you had a good day, sweetheart? Natalie nodded. Except everyone gave a ton of homework. Can I go get a snack? Uh-huh. Here. Her mom swung her chair around, pulled open a drawer, and swiveled back. She handed Natalie a small stack of quarters. Could you get me a Sprite? Or maybe some apple juice? You can start your homework in Ella's office. She's away all week. It was 15 minutes later, soda drained and cookies gone, before Natalie remembered Zoe's assignment. She jumped up out of Ella's chair, grabbed a dictionary from the shelf near the doorway, and flipped to the G's. Game, gargoyle, geisha, no, Giselle. Turning around, Natalie sat down at her desk and moved to the mouse next to the keyboard, and the darkened computer screen jumped to life. She'd used Ella's computer before, so she knew what to look for. She clicked on a folder labeled Reference and then clicked again on Encarta. The encyclopedia opened up, and a few clicks later, she had it in search mode. Natalie types Giselle and then hit the return key. And there he was, Giselle Theodore. End of mystery.